I've been a nurse for almost 8 years now, and night shifts are pretty normal for me. But about 2 weeks ago, I had some really strange experiences that I still can't shake off. On my third night, I was beyond exhausted. I walked up to room 304 and glanced at the chart. The old woman inside wasn't supposed to be there. She was sitting up in bed, her eyes fixed on me with an unsettling intensity. When I stepped inside, she whispered my name softly. I thought I was just exhausted, but a chill ran down my spine. How did she know my name? The nights continued. I was in the break room trying to catch a breath. That S when I heard it whispering. I glanced around, but no one was there. My heart began to race. Maybe I was imagining things: too little sleep, too much caffeine. Still, I couldn't shake the thought of the woman in 304. Around midnight, the lights in the ICU flickered. I was with a critical patient, and I felt someone or something watching me. I kept looking toward the hallway, half expecting to see her. I didn't want my fears to take over, but there was something about that night that felt really wrong. Then I thought I saw her again. It was in the waiting room. She sat there, staring at me. My heart jumped. I knew I shouldn't be scared, but I was. I asked a fellow nurse about her. She looked concerned. "There's no one in room 304, she said. My mind raced. Was I losing it? By the end of the week, I felt like a mess. Every little sound made my heart race. I dreaded those whispers that seemed to follow me. On my last night, I decided to confront it. I walked into room 304, my stomach in knots. She was there, staring blankly at me with an eerie smile. "Why are you still here?" I asked, my voice shaky. I didn't want to step closer, but I felt pulled in. Just then, she leaned forward and whispered something. I couldn't catch her words fully, but I felt it deep inside me. It was a strange sensation, like every nerve in my body was responding. Then she said, I turned to leave, panic rising in me. But when I looked back, she was gone. The bed was empty, just the sheets ruffled where she had been. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. What did I see? What happened that week? Why was I drawn to her? Those questions keep me up at night. I can still hear those whispers in the dark. And deep down, I feel like I'm still missing something. The following week, I returned to work, still haunted by what had happened in room 304. I decided I wouldn't let it get to me. I had a job to do and I needed to focus. But as soon as I entered the hospital, the air felt charged, heavy with something I couldn't quite place. As my shift started, everything felt routine: checking on patients, administering medications, the usual chaos of a night shift. But the strange pit in my stomach wouldn't go away. I took a moment in the break room, sipping coffee, trying to calm down. The whispers still echoed in my mind. Then, around 1 in the morning, the lights flickered again. I was at the nurse's station, filling out reports when it happened. The flickering was more than just a glitch this time. I felt the temperature drop. It got so cold, I could see my breath. I looked around, hoping someone else had noticed. The other nurses were busy, oblivious. I shook it off, focusing on my duties. But as I walked down the hallway, I spotted the waiting room. It was empty, but I felt drawn to it. Why couldn't I shake that feeling? That's when I heard it. A low, raspy whisper. It came from the direction of room 304. My heart raced. I hesitated, knowing I shouldn't go near there, but I felt compelled to see if she was back. I just needed to understand. Pushing open the door to room 304, I was met with darkness. The lights wouldn't turn on. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. Nothing answered. I took a small step inside, feeling for the wall to find a switch. But I stopped when I heard that raspy whisper again. "You're not supposed to be here," it said right next to me. My heart dropped. I turned quickly, but the room was empty. Cold sweat trickled down my back. I stumbled out, hitting the wall as I tried to regain my composure. As I backed away into the hallway, something caught my eye: a flicker on the bed. I looked again, and there, faintly illuminated by the emergency lights, I saw an outline of someone sitting. It was her. The old woman was there again, but this time she was holding something: a photograph. I could barely make out the shape, but my pulse quickened. Had I missed something important? Please, I blurted, stepping forward, what do you want from me? But as soon as I said it, she vanished. Just like before, she was gone, leaving only the empty bed behind. Suddenly, I felt cold fingers touch my arm. I turned, heart racing, to find a younger nurse standing behind me. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost, she said with a nervous laugh. I opened my mouth to say something, but I couldn't. Instead, I stayed silent, replaying that moment in my mind. Then I noticed something in her hand, a single white flower, with a note attached. That wasn't supposed to be in the hospital. I reached for it, thinking it might give me answers, but just as I did, the lights went out entirely. Everything was plunged into darkness. I felt panic creeping in, lingering whispers filling the void. Someone's in there, I heard the younger nurse say, her voice filled with fear. And then all at once, everything went quiet. I stumbled forward, my heart racing as the silence pressed down on me. The break room felt miles away, and I fought the urge to bolt. I could barely see anything, save for the dim glow from the emergency exit signs, which barely illuminated the path. Hello? I called into the darkness, my voice echoing and swallowed by the stillness. The only response was the faint sound of my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Stay close, the younger nurse whispered beside me. I turned to reassure her, but I could barely make out her features. The fear in her voice was palpable. Whatever we were facing felt real, and it was here among us. Then, the lights flickered back to life, bright and blinding for a moment before settling into a steady hum. I squinted against the sudden brightness and looked around. Nothing seemed out of place. No shadows, no old woman. Just the sterile walls of the hospital and the younger nurse clutching the white flower tightly. What was that? I asked. Did you see her? She shook her head, eyes wide. No, but I heard a voice. It crawled over my skin, her breath was quickening, reflecting my own anxiety. What did you hear? Something about the photograph. Her voice trembled. Maybe we should check the security footage. It might give us some answers. I nodded, relieved to have a plan. If we could find a clue, maybe the whispers would finally stop. She led the way back to the nurse's station. I felt a chill wind brush past me, but I dismissed it as a draft. At the station, we accessed the main controls for the security cameras. Tension hung in the air, and I kept casting glances down the corridors, half expecting to see the old woman emerge from the shadows. We scrolled through the footage, waiting for it to load while my stomach churned. Finally, the feed for room 304 popped up. I froze, the memory of her sitting on the bed flashing before my eyes. I could hardly breathe as we watched, the seconds ticking by like hours. And then I saw it. The screen showed the room in grainy black and white. The bed was empty at first, but then there she was. The old woman was back, staring directly at the camera. Her face was expressionless, the photograph clutched tightly in her hands. I leaned in closer, feeling drawn to her. And then she began to speak, her lips moving soundlessly. I couldn't hear anything, but her gaze felt heavy, almost pleading. My skin prickled as we replayed it again, but it was the same, the image of the old woman, the silent words. Then, without warning, the video glitched, and the screen erupted in static. Something's wrong. The nurse shouted, backing away. I nodded, panic rising once more. But I didn't want to leave just yet. There was still one thing I had to know. What was she trying to tell us? Just then, I spotted the flower she had given me earlier. The note hung from it like a promise. I grabbed it from the side of the station and tore it open. My hands trembled as I scanned the message. But instead of clarity, my heart dropped. Simply read, "Find me in the shadows." What does that mean? She asked, fear rising in her voice. Before I could answer, the lights flickered again, and this time they didn't come back on. The room was engulfed in darkness, and that familiar raspy whisper filled my ears. You're too late. And then, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. I held my breath, straining to hear over the echo of those footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, each sound sending chills racing down my spine. It was hard to tell how close they were, but I felt a pull toward the sound. Something inside me wanted to investigate, even though my instincts screamed to run. "Do you hear that?" I whispered, glancing at the nurse. Her eyes were wide with fear, and I could see her hands trembling. The air felt heavy, suffocating, as if something was lurking just out of sight. She started, but the words caught in her throat. Then, without warning, a loud crash rang out from somewhere farther down the hall, making us both jump. My heart raced as I seized her arm. "We need to check it out. We can't just stay here." "Are you crazy?" she whispered back, a hint of anger mixed with terror in her voice. "What if it's her?" I didn't know how to answer. The fear was consuming me, but something about the old woman's message nagged at my thoughts. I had to find her. Maybe she was trying to warn us. Before I could change my mind, I stepped toward the door, pulling the nurse along with me. "Stay close, don't let go." We made our way into the corridor. The dim emergency lights flickered above us, the shadows darting away as we moved forward. Each step felt like a jump into the unknown. I kept scanning the doorway to room 304, half expecting to see the old woman standing there. Then, just as we passed room 305, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. "Wait." I turned, but it was just a flickering light. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog of fear. The footsteps grew louder again, pulling me further down the hall. I felt compelled to follow, even as every instinct in my body screamed to turn back. Finally, I reached room 308. I looked around. "What do you think happened in there?" "I don't want to know," she shot back, her voice quivering. But still, she was right beside me. I put my hand on the doorknob, hesitating. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. "We have to check. It's the last room before the staircase." With a deep breath, I turned the knob. The door creaked open, and I stepped inside. It was dark, but in the dim light from the window, I saw a figure standing in the far corner. "Who's there?" I called, my voice wavering. The figure turned slowly. It was the old woman, her expression frozen, her gaze piercing through the shadows. My breath caught in my throat. She was holding something aframe. "It's not too late," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Then she lifted the frame, and I felt a dark wave wash over me. The world around me spun, and I stumbled backward. That was when I saw it, the visage of the photograph she had clutched so tightly. Before I could react, the lights pulsed back on, flooding the room with harsh brightness and blinding me. And just like that, she was gone. What just happened? My voice trembled, filled with confusion and dread. The hallway was silent again. I could hardly breathe. The nurse clutched my arm tightly. "I don't want to be here anymore. We need to leave. Now." I turned to her, adrenaline fading into fear. When it hit me, I needed answers. "We can't leave. Not yet. We have to find out what she wanted." "Find out what?" "She has gone." "No, she has not," I insisted, heart racing again. "She said it wasn't too late." And then, from deep within the shadows, I heard her voice once more. "Find me." My skin tingled, and I felt a shiver run down my spine as my mind raced with the realization we were far from finished. The air crackled around us. The nurse shifted uneasily beside me, her face pale as she stared into the darkness. "You're not really thinking we should search for her, are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to," I replied, though doubt crept in with each second I hesitated. I glanced back at room 308. What had just happened? I had that old woman's face burned into my memory, but her presence felt so fleeting. Letting go of the nurse's arm, I took a step forward, driven by a force I couldn't explain. Each echo of my footfalls felt like a drumbeat of our own danger. "We can't ignore what she said." What if my voice trailed off? What if it was a warning? I felt a cold draft sweep past me, and I shivered. "We should at least see if there's anything in that room," I insisted. The photograph, she had it, must mean something. Reluctantly, she followed me as I re-entered room 308. The bright lights were a stark contrast to the darkness just moments ago, illuminating the bare walls. My eyes scanned the room, searching for anything that might explain what had just happened, disbelief still clouding my mind. Look for the frame, I urged, as I stepped deeper into the room. Maybe it's here somewhere. I swept my hands across the dusty surfaces, but everything was unchanged since we arrived. A shiver ran through me as I recalled that moment before the lights switched back on. The old woman standing right there. She must be had her secrets with her. Just then, I noticed an old cupboard in the corner. The wood was worn and darkened with age. Over here, I called. My heart raced as I pulled the door open. Creaked ominously. Inside, I found a jumble of things. Old clothing, medical charts from years past, and then my breath caught. Buried beneath it all, half concealed by a dusty cloth, was the frame. I tugged it free, and as I turned it over, my muscles tightened. The photograph was double-sided. My fingers brushed over its surface as I saw the front first a group of hospital staff, all smiling, but it was the back that chilled me. It had names written in elegant script. One name stood out above the others, Clara Mills. Beneath it, a date from more than 2 decades ago. Before I could think, a loud bang echoed from the hallway, startling us. My head snapped in that direction, and then I heard it low whispers slithering through the air, but they weren't words. They were calling me, urging me to come closer. Did you hear that? I whispered, my throat dry. The nurse was gone. Panic surged through me. Where are you? I called out, but received no reply. The shadows seemed to stretch and sway around me, closing in. I felt that urge to investigate again, but now, guilt gnawed at me. I had dragged her into whatever this was. With my heart pounding, I turned back to the photograph. Clara Mills. Why did that name sound so familiar? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial. Then a thought struck me. The old woman, I whispered. Could she be Clara? Is she trying to tell us? The whispering intensified, a jumble of warnings enveloping me. Everything became urgent. I had to find the nurse. As I rushed back into the hall, determined to figure this out, I caught a glimpse of something in the corner of my eye movement. I froze, my breath hitching. Somewhere down that dark corridor, a figure was waiting. And this time I couldn't turn back. End of chapter. The figure loomed at the end of the corridor, shrouded in shadow. I felt a pull, as if some unseen force was drawing me closer, while another part of me screamed to run. My instincts clashed, and every instinct told me to stay away. Is someone there? I called, my voice wavering. No response. Just more whispers, echoing off the walls like an eerie melody that sent chills racing down my spine. I stepped forward anyway, drawn in by a mix of dread and curiosity. The figure shifted, and I caught a glimpse of a white lab coat. Nurse, I spat, hoping for a confirmation that it was the same nurse who had been with me. But instead of reassurance, I was met with silence. Then, to my horror, the figure began to dissolve into the darkness, as if the shadows themselves consumed it. Panic surged within me. I wasn't ready to lose anyone else. I turned, hoping to retrace my steps back to room 308, but the hallway felt different now. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, creating a strobe effect that deepened my growing sense of unease. I could feel the walls closing in. My breath quickened. Where are you? I shouted again. My voice echoed, but the response was only a low growl of whispers that sent shivers through me. I had to find her. I had to know what was happening. I forced myself to move despite the shadows creeping around me. As I passed room 310, I stopped. The door was ajar, and a faint light spilled out into the corridor. Felt inviting but wrong. Summoning what courage I had left, I pushed the door open. The scene inside was surreal. Medical equipment was strewn about, a stark contrast to the usually sterile atmosphere. Charts littered the floor, and the scent of antiseptic hung thick in the air. Then I saw her, a figure hunched over a desk. Nurse? I called hesitantly as I stepped closer. The figure turned, and my stomach dropped. It was Clara Mills, or at least a ghostly version of the old woman. Her eyes, once filled with sorrow, now burned bright with an unsettling intensity. Help me, she rasped, her voice a distorted echo. She's coming for you. Fear froze me in place. Who? You're past. All the lost souls, she warned. You need to leave. Just then, the overhead lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness, and I felt the air shift. A chilling presence swept through, brushing against my skin with icy fingers. Run! Clara's voice thundered, growing increasingly frantic. And just like that, the door slammed shut behind me, locking me in. I turned back to her, eyes wide. What do you mean? But my voice was lost. I had to escape. I raced to the door, pounding my fists against it. But it wouldn't budge. Then I heard it. A low whisper growing from behind, pooling like fog around my feet. You shouldn't have come. I spun around, heart hammering in my chest. My blood turned to ice. I wasn't alone. End of chapter. I felt my heart race as I turned to face the source of that voice. The figure materialized slowly, cloaked in shadows yet somehow solid. It wasn't Clara. This was something else. Get away from me, I shouted, but my voice trembled with fear. The figure took a step closer, its features obscured. I could make out a twisted smile that made my skin crawl. You should have listened, it hissed, a voice like gravel. It raised a hand, pointing directly at me. My instincts screamed to flee, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. Suddenly, the lights flickered back to life, revealing the full horror of the figure's pale skin, deep-set eyes void of emotion. A nurse's uniform, frayed and stained, hung loosely on its gaunt frame. I could see it now, the embodiment of my fears. What do you want? I croaked out. Your penance, the figure said, its voice slithering through the air. All souls must pay. It lunged, and I sprinted back, slamming against the locked door. Panic surged through me. I pounded against the cold metal, my hands shaking. I could hear Clara's voice echoing in my mind, warning me. Stop, I shouted. Just let me go. But the figure didn't respond. Instead, it melted into the shadows, becoming one with the darkness in the corners of the room, leaving behind a suffocating chill. I turned, scanning the chaotic room for an escape. That's when I noticed a window small, but maybe wide enough for me to squeeze through. I dashed across the room, avoiding the scattered charts and equipment. As I reached the window, I yanked it open, a rush of fresh air mixing with the sterile scent of antiseptic. Just as I lifted one leg onto the sill, I heard shuffling behind me. I froze. The figure had reappeared, its eyes now glowing with an unnerving light. You cannot escape, it growled, a wicked smile creeping across its face. Watch me, I muttered, determined to make my move. I climbed higher, sweat dripping down my brow as I pushed myself through. But just as I cleared the ledge and felt the cool breeze hit my skin, something cold gripped my ankle. I gasped, heart pounding, and looked down. The figure had reached me, pulling me back. I fought against its hold, desperate, but it was too strong. Let go. I screamed. A panic I had never known before clawed at me. The more I struggled, the tighter its grip became. It was as if shadows swirled around its fingers, wrapping around me like chains. In a last-ditch effort, I kicked backward, hitting whatever was left of the figure's form. I felt a moment of release, just a heartbeat of liberation. And then, everything went dark. The world slipped away, and the sudden silence was almost as deafening as the pounding chaos of my heart. What happened next would haunt me for nights to come. End of chapter. I woke up, cold and disoriented, lying on a hard surface. The faint hum of fluorescent lights buzzed above me. For a moment, I thought I was still dreaming, but the tangible pain in my side pulled me back to reality. I struggled to sit up, blinking against the bright glare. I was in an empty hospital room, the clinical smell of disinfectant permeating the air. Panic seized me again as I remembered. The figure. I gasped. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, the chill of the floor biting into my feet. My heart raced. I needed to get out. As I tried to rise, a wave of dizziness hit me, and I steadied myself against the wall. I couldn't tell how long I'd been unconscious. My mind was a blur, and dread pooled in my stomach. Had that thing followed me here? I took a deep breath and focused. Clara. I called out weakly, hoping to hear her reassuring voice. Nothing answered, just the sterile silence of the empty ward. My voice echoed back, the only company I had. Shuffling footsteps echoed down the hallway. I froze. Is someone there? I shouted, but the footsteps stopped suddenly. A cold knot tightened in my chest. I crept to the door and pressed my ear against it, straining to listen. Get it together, I whispered to myself, my breath quickening. I needed to get out of here. I grasped the cold metal doorknob, turning it slowly. When I pushed the door open, I stepped into the dimly lit corridor. The corridor was deserted, a long stretch of flickering lights overhead. I scanned the walls for a sign, anything that would point me to safety. My gut told me I needed to find Clara or someone else. Then I heard it again, the same shuffling sound, this time closer. My heart raced as I darted down the hallway, searching for the nearest exit. I turned a corner, and my breath hitched. In front of me stood another figure, this one slumped against the wall. I squinted, trying to make out its features, but the flickering lights wrapped it in shadows. Clara? I called, my voice trembling. It didn't move or respond, just stayed there, head hanging low. I took a cautious step closer. The figure slowly raised its head. A gasping breath filled the air, and it whispered, "Help me." I froze, the fear flooding back. It wasn't Clara. My instincts screamed at me to run, but something held me in place. "What do you need?" I asked, forcing the words out despite my fear. "Not safe," it croaked, its voice ragged and weak. It was then I realized this wasn't just a patient. This was someone like me, lost in this maze of horror. Before I could say anything more, a sharp sound cut through the air behind me. I turned quickly, and my stomach dropped. The dark figure loomed again, closer than before, its eyes glowing with an ominous light. "Your penance is due," it rasped, and I felt the room close in around me. This time, running wasn't an option. I had to face it. But how? Just as the dread settled in, I noticed something shimmering on the floor by the slumped figure. A glint of steel. A scalpel? I snatched it up just as the figure lunged, shadows swirling and tightening around me like a noose. As the nightmare unfolded, I had one thought: this was not over yet. End of chapter. My hand clenched tightly around the scalpel as the figure lunged. I barely had time to react. In one swift motion, I ducked to the side, feeling the rush of air as it passed just inches from me. The sudden rush of adrenaline sharpened my focus. "Get back!" I shouted, my voice strong despite the fear gnawing at me. I faced the dark figure, its glowing eyes piercing through the shadows. There was something almost human in its gaze, though twisted and malevolent. I stumbled backward, slipping on the cold floor, but I managed to keep my grip tight on the scalpel. Couldn't let it take me like before. I had to fight back. With every ounce of courage, I raised the blade, ready for the next attack. But instead of lunging again, it paused. "You seek to resist?" It hissed, its voice a rasping echo. "You will succumb, like all the others." I narrowed my eyes, breathing heavily. "What do you mean, all the others?" For a moment, it seemed as if the shadows shifted around it, forming grotesque shapes, almost human in outline, before dissipating. "Your friend is lost. You cannot save her." My heart sank at the mention of Clara. I needed to focus. The scalpel felt too small against this creature of darkness. "Clara's not gone. I'll find her," I shouted defiantly, but uncertainty flickered in my chest. Just then, I caught movement behind the figure. Was it fading? No, another shadow materialized, different from the first. It darted towards me, and I instinctively raised my scalpel. But the new figure held its hands up in a gesture of peace. "Wait, please," pleaded. It was a woman, her face as pale as the walls surrounding us, eyes wide and terrified. "Don't hurt me. Who are you?" I shouted, glancing between the two figures. The dark one remained still, watching us with a predatory gaze. I'm just like you," she gasped. "I've been trapped here for days." That thing, she pointed shakily at the dark figure. "It preys on those who've lost hope. feeds on fear. Then it all came rushing back. The nightmares, the whispers, the faces I thought I had escaped. "What do you know about Clara?" I asked, desperate for any shred of information. "I don't know how long it's been for her. But we can't wait. It will come for you next." Her voice shook as she glanced at the shrouded figure, lingering just outside the edge of the flickering light. Before I could respond, the figure lunged once more, fierce and unrelenting. I felt heat wash over me, the air thickening as it closed in. I had to make a choice. Fight or flee, the shadows writhing in my vision. Just then, in the chaos, something glinted on the floor, another tool. I barely registered it as I turned to run, instinct kicking in. I dashed down the corridor, adrenaline pushing me forward. Behind me, I heard the woman scream, but in the corner of my eye, I caught another glimpse of a familiar form. Clara? No, it was someone else, and they beckoned me forward. "Come on. This way." Now I had to choose. Should I follow the mysterious figure, or turn back to the woman trapped in the dark? The urgency gripped me. Each second counted. Run or face the darkness. I shouted, breathless as I steered towards the glimmering promise of distance, keeping my scalpel close. End of chapter. I sprinted down the narrowing corridor, my pulse pounding in my ears, each heartbeat urging me forward while dread gnawed at my thoughts. The shadows danced around me, whispering, calling my name, but I pressed on, clinging to the hope that I could escape this nightmare. Just ahead, the hallway spilled into a wide, open space. I skidded to a halt, taking in the emergency exit sign barely illuminated over the far door. Relief washed over me. Momentarily, freedom was so close, but the shadows behind me swirled and roared, and I could feel that cold grip of despair clenching my throat. "Clara," I gasped, unwilling to leave her behind. My mind flickered back to the figure of the woman who had warned me, torn between either running for safety or going back to help her. Fear and might coiled in my gut. Suddenly, the dark figure materialized behind me, its glowing eyes fixed with hunger. "You cannot escape," it hissed, its twisted smile spreading wider. "You have nowhere to run." I felt panic rising in my chest as the weight of desperation settled in. This thing fed on fear. Perhaps I could turn it against itself. "I'm not afraid of you," I yelled, though my voice cracked with underlying terror. I steadied my grip on the scalpel, feeling its familiar weight, the only piece of normalcy amidst this chaos. "You should be," it murmured, moving closer, closer, shadows rippling outwards. "Will you join the others, lost and damned?" Before it could take another lurch toward me, I turned heel and raced for the exit. Adrenaline surged through me as I pushed through the door, throwing it open. Cold air rushed in like a tide, sharp against my face. I stumbled into a small courtyard. A breath of fresh air embraced me, but it was short-lived as the shadows chased, eager to engulf me once more. I glanced around, searching for some form of escape. But the hint of freedom shattered as I noticed other figures lingering just outside the light. Emerging from a hazy darkness, faces I recognized but wasn't sure why. General hospital staff, patients. Were they trapped too? The sickly glow of their eyes beckoned me in. This dark paradise could become my grave. An offering, the figure in the dark called from behind me. "You can join them or you can fight." The choice pressed heavily on my shoulders. "No," I shouted, shaking my head. "I refuse." Clutching my scalpel, I focused my energy on what Clara had said, finding the hope among the shadows. I would face my entrapment. As if sensing my resolve, the shadows recoiled momentarily, giving way to a clearer path, a doorway, an exit to freedom. Without a second thought, I ran, hitting the door with my shoulder. The door swung open, revealing a sunlit hallway, bright, warm, and alive. I stepped into the light, moments from escaping this dark veil. But just as I turned to close the door behind me, I caught a glimmer in the shadows. The figure flickered with rage. "Clara!" I shouted into the void. A figure behind the shadows stirred the old woman. "Help," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but it reached my heart nonetheless. I hesitated at the door, torn between the promise of safety and the call for rescue. Even in the light, I felt her pull. Was it a trap? The darkness behind me surged, howling with fury. Let them go, the figure hissed. All must pay for their past. I closed my eyes, grit teeth, wrestling with indecision. Should I save her, perhaps risking myself for a chance of rescue? Or escape entirely, allowing that fearful past to swallow everything? Find me in the shadows. Clara's echo resonated through the air. My heart raced as pieces locked together. Shadows were her prison. They weren't my enemies but my guides, and maybe, just maybe, I could save her. With resolve surging, I turned and stepped back into the darkness, leaving the light behind. Clara, I shouted, I'm coming. As shadows encircled me again, I understood whatever the darkness held. It no longer had power over me, and perhaps within this tremble of uncertainty, the true battle had yet to unfold. What waited beyond, I didn't know. But deep down, I felt I wasn't just fighting for Clara but for myself, reclaiming the peace lost in the throes of fear. The whispers faded, leaving questions behind, but I was ready to face the answers. Let us finish this, I said softly, stepping deeper into the shadows, willing the answers to arise. End of chapter.